Hey everybody, welcome. I am veve Magic, and I am joined today by Sean from Comics and Crypto and SiliconSecure to go over a fun video regarding my recent trip to Heritage Auctions. I went to a live lot viewing for an Art of Disneyland event. And these guys know quite a bit about Heritage Auctions, so I wanted to bring them in to kind of go over the event and then sort of transition into physical versus digital collecting. So what's up, fellas?
Hey,
What's up?
Hey guys.
Thank you
Yeah.
for joining me today. So let me start off by going over this event. So I've been meaning to do this video for like close to 2 months. I went to this March 25th, 26th was the actual auction, and the viewing was like a day before. And it was in Beverly Hills at the Heritage Auctions location. And what was really neat about this lot viewing and reception was they had most of the items in their catalog on display, and anybody and everybody could go to this event and check out some of these items prior to bidding. And
So cool.
what I loved about the event, the live auction itself, is it took place over the weekend. I mean, these people went for hours and hours and hours. I want to say like 12 hours each day of just from item to item to item. And there's just this whole catalog they had to go through of all these things. But this was the first time that I met Crystal Hefner in person. So we went to the lot viewing together, and she was jotting down stuff that she was interested in. And then it was fun for us and interactive, and kind of like made me think about veve, because over the weekend we were constantly on the phone with each other, letting each other know when an auction was coming up that we were interested in, and then sort of like, did you win? Did you win? And then I was like thinking, how fun would this be to have an event like that in the veveverse where you could hold live auctions and like everybody could gather at a place, and you could just have like this live auction event and everyone is there at the same time, sort of watching and bidding. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
So cool. So cool.
That
Yeah.
would be dope.
100%. I was really bummed because I wanted to go to the event and I was out of town that weekend. Otherwise, I would have been there. I would have drove for sure. It was like a 6-hour drive from where I am, and 100% would have been there. Like that's something to me. I just, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely reached out to you because I was like, oh my gosh, this would be so fun to go together. And you're like, dang it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really interesting to observe like the type of people that were there. I was really interested. I had never been to an auction of any kind before. And, this is with my fandom. So I wanted to see what sort of the fan base is for a Disney auction of physical items. And I mean, it was wide ranging. You could see people that were like Disney nerds. I'm one of them, so I kind of feel okay. And then you could tell that there was people that potentially were, had a little dough with them. And I listened out, and there was like one person there who specifically loves collecting the posters than the parks. So much like these guys back here, he collects actual posters that were hung in the park. I will go through a few items in here. There was several posters. There was like the Matterhorn bobsled, Peter Pan's flight.
And these were posters that were actually used in the park. Is that right? Like
yeah. So it was like on all the that one looks familiar, right?
So cool.
That's
my heart.
Those are all I mean, in a way, those are all 101 posters, because it's like, how do you get your hands on posters used in the park?
And,
that's so
and
special.
The description too would tell you like if there was damage or what condition it was in. So that Storybook Land one sold for $3.3K, so $3,300, not too shabby.
Wow.
And yeah, and I put, there was also the Jungle River Cruise, and I put like my poster and AR next to it at the location. I did a ton of AR photos while I was there, and videos. I'll include those in this video. And so it was really interesting to see the types of items. You had posters, which are incredible in my opinion. You had ride operating buttons. You had owner's manuals for the rides themselves. You had a seatbelt from Autopia. Like you had characters that were store displays at the original Disney stores. It's just such a wide array of items, and I would like pay attention to see sort of where people seemed most interested. And it was surprising that it was very widespread. It wasn't like there was everybody gravitated towards one thing. I mean, and if you watched this auction live, some things I was shocked at that would go for crazy money, and other things I was like, that's it? That's all you paid for it? So
Are these like items like the seatbelt from Autopia? Was that like a mechanic who had an extra seatbelt, that he kept, or was it like some guy going on a ride that had a wrench and like somehow during the ride got the seatbelt off? I mean,
I have no idea. I don't remember. It had like the descriptor on it, but I don't remember specifically. Shoot, there was one thing in here that I wanted to know because I have a replica, but I'm not finding it. Oh, here it is.
That's such a
So this piece right here is the sign at Walt Disney Studios, and they made. And I was like, wait a second, that sign is actually like buried in the ground there, like the street sign. So how did they do it? But they somebody made a physical collection of a limited edition of replicas, and they were like about 6 feet tall. But what's really neat is the Parks and Disney 100 celebration came out with like statue versions of them. So like this is my own that I have that matches it. So yeah, that was the thing too, is there was items that were released at Disney stores, because I've just now started collecting more Disney items as I've gotten into veve and wanting to match digital and physical, and also I've been really into the Disney 100, especially limited pieces, because I think in the future these could be very hard to come by. And like this sign, for example, I mean, now it's really hard to come by, and that sold for thousands at the event. So yeah, it's really interesting. The other thing is, I did try to talk to a couple of people about like veve, or they were like, what are you doing? What brought you to the event and everything? And I said, well, I collect digital collectibles of Disney on this app called veve, and I noticed the immediate sort of pullback, right? Because I'm a competitor, is kind of how it was seen. And I caught it, and I said, now I'm really excited about this because I never had interest in these sort of events before, but because of digital collecting, I am now very excited to be more engrossed in physical collecting, and it's given me a passion for it. And I don't see it as competitive at all. I see it as very complimentary from my perspective, and everybody's different. But when I did that and talked to them that way about it, they were like, oh. And then I showed them some of my AR pictures that I took. They had all these, little store displays, and I was putting characters that matched. They had the Mad Hatter and Alice in Wonderland. I put the cat there, and I showed them, and they were like, oh, wow. So there's like this little bit of fear there, or apprehension. And then once you can kind of open them up a little bit, they're much more understanding, I feel like.
Yeah, and Heritage, when they first, so I started collecting coins on Heritage. So the only time I ever went to a physical Heritage, and they're kind of boring unless it's like the big items. So, it's coin after coin after coin. So think of just thousands of coins just going up for bid. Unless it's the coins you want to bid on, you're like, it's a yawner, right? So most of my coin purchases have been proxy bid. So you can pre-bid those online, right? And so you'll never really meet all the collectors that are bidding on a certain item. Or they were, live bids where I'm like bidding live, but I'm bidding at the last minute to outbid, other bidders. But if you think about, Heritage and the amount of money that they're spending, right? So you just showed me a physical catalog. I got to take pictures. I've got to not only take pictures, but now I got to put a catalog together. Oh, and I got to mail this out to people, thousands of people. Heritage was known for being ahead of their time at the time they started doing online auctions. So I think that it's just a matter of time before you see, this adapt forward to the next stage where, the Heritage, the Christie's. We're already seeing Christie's get involved with like NFTs and auctioning those off. So we've seen big auction houses already participate in special NFT auctions for Web3 type of NFT platforms. So I think it's just a matter of time, really, before all of a sudden the first Walt Mickey statue on veve is in strong hands. There's no liquidity on the market, there's none available for sale. And it's like, okay, well, when one does sell, it sells at auction, right? So
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, the reason they probably listened a little more when you said, hey, come here to buy, is because they spend all this money marketing, and it's quite a bit of money, for, they're hoping to, they tell the sellers that, hey, we're going to market your, we're charging you 17%, but we're making catalogs and we're online and we're doing all this stuff. So, it makes sense that they would follow the trend if that's where the trend is going. It's really follow the money with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's so important to be curious, not judgmental. And I've been blessed to interview a few people who are leaders in their own industries, and they definitely feel that way. They're curious, but they don't really understand it right now. They don't understand it. But explain that what you just said, VV Magic, 100%. That's exactly what it is. When you explain that these digital collectibles are creating collectors and it's igniting their passion and love for this IP, that's a really big deal. It's a really big deal. And it's hitting people worldwide. And I can only imagine, especially like recently I was at a baby shower, and there's a kid and his dad, and they're decked out in Spider-Man outfit. And I was showing his youngest son the Spider-Man in AR, and he lost his mind. He's a breakdancer. Like his he teaches breakdancing, so the kid was going nuts and doing breakdancing moves with Spider-Man, and he loved it. He asked me to take like 10 photos with Spider-Man, and the dad was just really shocked by this, and he was curious, and that's when he understood, because he said, "Oh, NFTs," but then he saw that was when seeing was believing. Seeing became believing, and I think especially as Web3 matures over time, and the technology, especially the technology catches up, people are going to start to understand it more, and it's going to impact them in probably the same way.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, I see it just as so just so cohesive and complementary looking forward into the future. I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about some of the fellow people in the community and how they have just amassed huge collections on a physical form, but because of veve, and that they hadn't done it prior to veve, and now it's like they need like storage facilities to keep all their stuff, and they want to go to the go to the the decons and to collect more. And so it's like, if these physical people could hear these stories and understand what digital collecting has done for physical collecting, I think that would also sort of open their eyes and minds to everything,
100% agree. 100% agree. And I'm one of those people. I invested in comic books because I was
been going ham.
I've always been a collector. I was a collector in comic books, but then I started investing pretty heavily in comic books, like in 2017, 18. That's when I really got heavy into it. And now my passion for collecting and investing in this space has dipped into so many different categories, and it never would have happened really if it wasn't for veve. I fully give veve credit for that, because it's ignited my love and passion for all this IP and all these things. And I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, that was another reason that I wanted the two of you on, is because, you have been doing so much with your physical collecting, and SiliconSecure is, you can see in his background, he's been matching things that he's gotten on veve, and he's been a physical collector for quite some time, right? We did a live stream, and he just went into a box and got out a little Lego set to give away, and he's like, yeah, it was like $9.99. And my Collectibles comments on the live stream, and he's like, that's like $150 right now on eBay, and he's like, I paid $10 for it. But you guys are the perfect ones to have on. Before I go for it, I have to show you the one thing that I actually really did want to bid on, and it's this lightning bug prototype from the Main Street Electrical Light Parade. I wanted it so bad. I wanted it so bad. It sold for $3,000.
Wow. So it's a prototype. It's a smaller version, like a little statue, but it's a prototype example of what it's going to look like on the actual. That's cool. This is what's really cool about this auction, is that it gives people an opportunity to buy and own things that they never would have an opportunity to own. A lot of it's because, and it's smart by Disney too, because these things are, like for the carts, for example, you can get, I think you could get like carts from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And a lot of these machines are probably out of date, so they're probably upgrading. And like, what are we going to do with these? We're going to just toss them, or we can give them
Win-win.
back to the people who love this IP. Yeah, and that's so cool because it gives the people an opportunity to own this stuff. And that's
There
really
was
cool.
a sky bucket from the
Yeah, look at that.
that's old school.
I mean, that's massive. And that's the thing. Where are you going to put this thing? But that would look epic if you could fit that in your house. Yeah, especially in a fun rec room. Wow, that is so cool. Oh my gosh.
$70,000.
And Heritage has to get these items, and they have to, build up this catalog, right? So this takes months and months and months, probably even a year, to consign and store in a warehouse and all this stuff. So I mean, it's a big deal for Heritage, and that's why you saw them kind of doing all the press around it and press releases, and
they had news stations and everything out.
Yeah, and of course they want the big items to be highlighted because that carries the auction. It's sort of like you go to a mall, you got a Walmart or a Target because that's the anchor store for that shopping mall. So
that's awesome.
So can you both give me a little bit of your background and involvement, if any, with Heritage auctions? Let's start with maybe Silicon.
So I had never heard of Heritage auctions before I started coin collecting. And even when I coin collected, I still hadn't heard of Heritage. I started off really, as a young kid, it was, flea market coins. And then as I grew older and had more disposable income, it was ended up being bullion, gold and silver and platinum kind of coins. And then as I got into, certified coins or PCGS certified coins, then, Heritage had a lot of those coins and weekly auctions, and they'll do for modern coins, which is what I focus on. They'll do an auction every twice a week, and then they'll do like the big one, the big items on Sunday. So here's an example of, and I'm covering up the barcode just because I don't want to share my whole life here, but this is an example of a platinum eagle, a 1/4 ounce platinum eagle that is a Heritage coin, for example, or one that you could buy off Heritage. And this is a 2004, but it's 1 ounce of platinum. Wow. And so that's an example of something that I would buy. I really like the 1/4 ounce, 10th ounce, these little platinum pieces that have limited mintages. And Heritage was a great place for me to accumulate that. Also eBay. But when some of this stuff gets really scarce, it's hard to really find any places that have, these kind of coins other than the big auction houses. So, it's a place that I probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at over the years. And I moved into other, I crossbred, so to speak, as they say. So I went into the space memorabilia auctions, right? Because they would send me catalogs of stuff, and I'm in a space, and I checked off, I'm interested in that. And when they did that every few years, I was able to get a Jim Lovell signed, print of, Jim Lovell astronaut badge, which I think I've shown you before, Sean, and you've seen that. And then I've got I've got NASA prints from NASA of photos of the moon, like just cool stuff that you can't really get anywhere else, and so I cherish that kind of stuff.
And you had some pretty decent like flip instances with some of your coins, didn't you, that you've gotten through Heritage? Probably my most expensive coin, I spent about over, there's an auction fee as well. So let's say $22,000 on a coin, which, it's a coin, right? Like it's in a little holder, right? Like it's a lot of, it's 20 G's in your hand. It's kind of like, I'm a diamond dealer or something, right? Like, so, I kind of was always cautious and not trying to put too much money into any given coin due to liquidity. Again, you don't want to get backed into one big piece. But I had a pretty rare Walking Liberty $50 proof that was a highest grade in its grade. And, it just was the key.
right? Because at the end of the day, if you're collecting uh, condition and all that, then you look for the best, right? And so, the kind of people that I would be competing against if for that particular coin would be, billionaires or people that own like race car, race car, sponsorships or things like that. Like, so, there's a certain point where money becomes really important. Like you need to have like lots of it in order to keep competing and buying. So, for me, that was when I decided to sell off my Liberty
Mm.
half dollar collection, and I had one of the best ones, not the best, but one under the top 10 in the competing sets. And so they have something called the
Wow.
coin registry, where you can register your coin and compete with other members of the community. And so, that's kind of it's sort of like the our veve MCP, right? And then
Mm.
eventually we'll have the MCP, you know, board. We're all looking at it daily to see like, oh, who moved up, 10 spaces or 100 spaces or whatever.
I love that. And also you can advertise what you own, right? So people are aware of what you have. And that's one of my biggest issues right now with the physical space is that there's a lot of things out there that people just don't know exist. And
Yeah.
that makes it kind of tough. And the only way that people will know about it is if maybe you advertise it on social media and it goes viral, or you post it on eBay. But it's like, am I really even trying to sell this thing? And it makes it kind of tough. So I'm excited to see a platform that helps advertise physical collectibles in a way where people can embrace them or search for them to see if they even exist. I think that's really special.
And you establish a pedigree for a collectible. And as we know, as collectors, pedigree is very, very important. We talk about it on
Yeah.
VV, but pedigree means like, hey, SiliconSecure owned it as part of his collection for 2.5 decades, and now he's selling it at auction. Okay,
Yeah.
well, who the hell is SiliconSecure, right? If you're in the VV space, you're like, okay, I think I know who that guy is. But if you're in the coin space, if I haven't really established a name or a pedigree in my collecting style or what I focused in on, some that can make the difference between who comes to your auction in the first place. But second, the desirability of your collection, because you may have a reputation of being a voracious collector that was very focused and very had an eye for a certain coin, and you just you went in and you bought the best, right? So that will impact the value as well. So I mean, all these things have a factor, but I think when you're talking about authenticity, having that pedigree it adds another level. Although coins
Mhm.
like with PCGS or CGC, which is the same by the way, these are the same companies. These are all like owned by the same company. They're just different grading services owned by so there are different coin companies that are graded, but as far as PCGS and CGC, they're the same like organization. And so whether it be comic books or whether it be coins, right? You want to know who owned it. You want to know where it came from. You want to know that it came from a legitimate collection and that you're not buying some stolen property off the street, right? So that's also a
Yeah.
factor. And then it adds value if it was owned by, a famous artist or owned by a famous
Yeah.
collector or stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Good
Like
point.
comic books, especially, you see that often with comic books. You'll see, like, I know people who have comic books that were owned. It says on there the pedigree or owned by Frank Miller.
Wow.
This comic book was once owned by Frank Miller, or even Nicolas Cage once owned the
Hey, yeah,
Action Comics 1 9.0 comic, and it says from the collection of Nicolas Cage. So that's a big deal, and people will pay a premium for that.
yeah. And in coins, there are certain hoards. Maybe it's part of the Carson City Mint hoard, and so people want to get, it's certified to be that by PCGS, and PCGS kind of guarantees that. They have insurance and all this other money behind it, and so you're like, okay, great. Like I'm kind of buying something that is guaranteed by a parent company as long as this is original. So
Yeah.
they can be faked as well. So just like I'm sure comic books and the CGC cases can be faked. So yeah, it's all, if there's money, there's always going to be a scammer nearby.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what about you, Sean? What's sort of been, have you delved into a lot of auctions through Heritage Auctions? Like I know you're very familiar with them. Can you tell me kind of your experience?
Yeah. Let's see. Some of the first things that I bought from them were sealed video games, some sealed VHS tapes as well. But actually, there was a huge auction that had hundreds and hundreds of sealed VHS tapes, and we're talking like they had the only one of one beta, like the first print of Superman. That one sold for like $50,000. That one alone sold for $50,000. That was probably one of the higher sales of the day. But I didn't expect to watch this auction because there was a couple of things that I was eyeing. But I ended up watching the entire auction because it was really cool. On Heritage, they actually had somebody there putting in the bids, and it was like a live performance. And I'm watching this and embrace. It was epic. It was so epic. I regret not doing it live. I want to contact them and figure out like when they're going to do another one live, because I want to do a live stream. We could talk about it and watch these live auctions happen. It's so much fun. Oh my gosh. I was thinking the entire time, like, man, I wish this was live. At the time we didn't do live auctions, but we do now, or live streams. We do them now. And I next time. Yeah, 100%. So a couple of the items that I was really eyeing, Spencer, Kevin, and I, were sealed VHS tapes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of the original animated show. And what's really special about these ones in particular, they were from the pedigree of they were once owned by Mark Friedman. So it says from the collection of Mark Friedman, and Mark Friedman was the guy who contacted the creators of the Turtles in 1984 or 85 and said, guys, like, you have something special here. I want to make your brand one of the biggest in the world. And if you ever watch the show, the Toys That Made Us, I strongly suggest watching The Toys That Made Us, the episode on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because Mark Friedman is actually interviewed a lot on that episode. And he talks about the process of what it was like. And so he had a couple of his own VHS tapes that were part of his own personal collection. And he's also part of the big reason why the movie and the show was made. So have an opportunity to own this, to me, on a personal level, was significant, but also I understand the value of this, where this could go long term. Yeah, so the auction came up. There were 3 or 4 VHS tapes, and I was able to get 2 of them. And I screen recorded the auction when we actually were putting in bids. Oh, it was so epic! I put my bid in, and he said, "Okay, this number. Here's this number. It's in." Going once, going twice, sold. And I'm on the phone with Spencer. Him and I are just cheering and celebrating. It was epic. It was so cool. So we have that in our collection now. It was really a special moment. Yeah. If Mark Freeman ever sees this video, we'll try to get you on the podcast.
There you go.
Yeah. But it was a really special moment, and it was just really fun to see how excited people were about VHS tapes, especially. Man, I think they hit over $1 million in sales for the entire collection. Wow. It was insane. Yeah, there were a lot of like $3,000, $5,000 sales for the entire collection. It was a really big deal.
And it's easy to get carried away. You kind of have to check yourself because that rush.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's just like on the veve marketplace, man. It's like, what did I just spend? Oh, shit.
Plus, you have the buyer fee, right? You don't calculate that in the bid. So
yeah,
usually
exactly.
Top of it. Yeah.
So one of the thing that this sort of diving into this made me think about is what I noticed with physical collectors and collections is most of the time there's not a quick flip. You can do a quick flip here and there if you were able to buy something at a low price and nobody was really paying attention, and then you turn around and you capitalize on that. But for the majority of physical collectors, it's a waiting game, right? You are waiting for significance and history to go down further the line for your item or items to gain, the perceived value or what it, should be valued at in the future. And then when that time comes, you either decide to hold it or you sell it or whatever. And I, again, view physical and digital collecting very similarly, but I find that there's so much anxiousness with the digital collecting community. And why is this not worth a lot of money now? And that sort of desperation and panic and thinking that they bought something that isn't good because it's not immediately worth more money. And so I just thought that this was like a very healthy reminder that it doesn't work that way. There could be something Disney 100 that I'm buying right now that it's worth $5, but in 10, 20 years from now, it might be worth $1,000.
I mean, we have examples of that in veve right now. The Miles Morales AF-15, or I'm sorry, not the Miles Morales, Amazing Fantasy 15. I keep saying Miles Morales because he's so popular. Spider-Verse, his shoes are dropping tomorrow at 7 a.m. By the way, on the Nike.
Ooh, Nike. Those are nice.
I know.
listeners can get that, and you can get them for your kids, so they have the kid sizes as well. But not just a little plug there for
So
Nike.
cool.
But
Send him his money, Nike.
but yeah, I think that like the AF-15 is an example, right? Or there's certain comics like the Marvel one, right? There that yeah, you could make that quick flip, and you could make a lot of money on the secret rares and that kind of stuff. But in general, what I've noticed in coin collecting, at least, as a parallel, is yes, I've had a couple of quick flips. You have to be in the game. You have to be focused. You have to know what's being released from the U.S. Mint. Sometimes you can buy something you spend $300 on, and you flip it for $1,200, and that's a rare thing, especially from a U.S. Mint, just made product. But it's possible. It happens, right? But in general, you buy something and you expect it to go below issue price, or around issue price, or stay around issue price for a while. So if you buy it because you love it, unless you really, really, really know what you're doing, and then you're buying it because you know what you're doing. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. So I think that is and then with coins, it gets even more complex, because you may have people marketing certain coins. When I say marketing, certain channels, or there may be a 2-month marketing blast on this coin, and so it's called a promotion. And so these dealers promote these coins, and it like gets pumped up, so to speak, and then it comes down, right? So it's like you kind of have to know the game and know what part of the game you're in.
Very interesting similarity there.
There is.
Yeah. Timing is so important. Timing is so important, like you said. And because a lot of people don't realize, I mean, we're seeing like 80-90% drop in value for a lot of these collectibles, the digital collectibles, but we're seeing that in the physicals as well. Those in the sports card market, I've seen Eric Whiteback. He's a really great content creator for cards and just collectibles in general. But he tweets out pretty often, and he says this card went for X this year, and a year later it's a 90% loss. So it happens often. I've seen comic books, even big grails like Superman 1. There was I think it was a 5.0 grade, I got 5.5 grade maybe, of Superman #1, and it sold for $700,000. I think it's about $700,000 in 2021 or 2022, and then the next year it sold at a 50% loss at $350,000. Does that change my level of conviction for Superman 1 long term? Absolutely not. It was just a tough short term play, and he lost. He lost the battle on that one. Actually, that's happening right now too. There's a Superman 7.0 grade. So for context, for Superman 1, there's there was originally 2 8.0s. Those are the highest grades of Superman 1 for a blue label on CGC Census. Apparently, somebody cracked one of the 8.0 grades, and it got bumped up to, because he got it pressed and cleaned, and got it bumped up to an 8.5. So now there's 1.85, 1.80, and there's 2 7.0 grades. And one of the 7.0 grades is owned by this awesome guy named Darren Watts. He's been in the news lately. His collection, he inherited like 300,000 comic books from his dad. And one of them was a Superman 1, and it's a 7.0 grade. And the other one, the 7.0 grade, is actually on auction right now at Golden Auctions. It's at $1 million right now. The previous sale for that 7.0 grade was back in 2021 for $2.6 million. And I probably expect it to hit 3. I'd be shocked if it goes under that, to be honest. But that's an example of a flip. He's trying to flip that, and we're rooting for the guy to see what happens. But it's a tough game. It's flipping collectibles, but we're seeing the same thing happen in the physical market. So it's not like this is out of the ordinary here, what we're seeing on veve. But does that change my long-term conviction for some of these grails? Absolutely not.
And in your opinion, Sean, if we were in a better economy, a bull market, for that item, what do you think it'd go for? Double?
Man, I mean, it's very possible. It's very possible. I'm really excited to see what it turns out. But I mean, the 8.0 copy of that sold last year for $5.3 million. So that's some context there. That's the highest selling comic book to date. It sold for $5.3 million.
So that's kind of
a lot of these comics.
Yeah.
As of now, that's the top, right? That's the ceiling. But I mean, it's 7.0 is basically, there's only 4 copies in the highest grade. And it's 2 7.0s and 8.0 and 8.5. But yeah, it's interesting. It's, the ceiling is very important, but it's also the floor. What's the 0.5 grades look like for these big grails, these big Silver Age keys. And like, for a modern age comic, like Ultimate Fallout 4, we've seen a 50% dip in the 9.8s for those over the past year and a half. But there's 5,000, there's almost 5,000 9.8s alone. There's a lot of 9.8s. So a 0.5 of modern age.
You like laying on the ground with like 1,000 of them yourself.
yeah, that was House of Slaughter. That was another. Yeah. That was great. That's a whole other story. But but modern age comics, you have a 0.5 grade. It's not going to be worth much at all because there's so many high grades, and the expectations are that the comic is going to be at least a 7.0 or higher. But the old comics, there's less than 200 total editions. A 0.5 is incredibly valuable. I mean, AF-15 is a perfect example. There's, I think, about 3,000 to 4,000 graded comics of AF-15 on the CGC census, and there's about 121 0.5 grades. And the 1 year average for 0.5 of AF-15, and I'm talking to 0.5, like part of the cover's missing sometimes, and people are paying $13,000 for that comic. $13,000 for 0.5 grade. So it's important to keep an eye on the floor too. Yeah.
Yeah. They just want to say they have it, right? I mean, that's just
exactly. Yeah. And those will continue to go up in value.
I think the floor is important, but like when you look at the floor compared to the top, they're in two different worlds. You got two different buyers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're both important in their own way. I mean, the ceiling's important because you want that ceiling to keep rising up, right? So like one of the biggest grails by far for collectibles is the Mickey Mantle 52 Topps rookie card. And there's only 3 10s. And that card is estimated to be valued at $30 to $40 million if it ever hit auction. And one of the guy, it's an awesome story. This one collector, he has the most absurd collection of sports cards and collectibles. And he bought that card back in 96 for $121,000. And people called him crazy. Like, what are you doing? You're insane. Why would you spend that kind of money on that card? But he understood the importance of differentiating value. He understood the importance of grading. And he said, I'm going to get that 10 graded card. I'm going to get that perfect graded card. At the time, he didn't even know how many were out there. But he's like, I'm going to get that. And there's only 3 to date. And it's probably only going to be 3 for the rest of our lives. And that card is now worth $30+ million. It's insane.
Not a bad investment.
Yeah.
Conversation, it personally gets me like more hyped up on the digital collecting, because this is like the stuff that I think about, and I'm not like that level of a collector in the physical realm at all. But for me, it's like I have to, on some of these FAs and some of these pieces that come in the digital collecting environment, I have to have one. Like, that's how I feel. I have to have one. For me, this is important. For me, this is significant. For me, this is historical, for all these different reasons why. And I mean, that's just like such a great story. I personally believe that we will see the same thing happen in the future with digital collecting, is that there's going to be a point in time where items like that, the marketplace is going to be so scarce, and people will just want to be able to have a piece of, one Spider-Man or one partner statue or whatever the case may be, one Grail comic.
Fractional Spider-Man common.
And that's something that a lot of people just don't really understand or process right now, the importance of first appearance, because we're getting a lot of first appearances right now. So it's not as significant, but over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot more collectibles drop. And like when AF-15 first was released in the 60s, I mean, no one really thought twice about it, right?
Right.
And even Ultimate Fallout 4, but
I was just going to say FA Jabba dropped today, baby.
Yeah, there you go. But over the decades, as more comics were released with Spider-Man, thousands of comic books were released with Spider-Man. You always revert back to the FA, the first one, right? And Ultimate Fallout 4, when that first dropped, it was interesting because I was talking to some people about that yesterday. Even Ali from Elite Comics 11, he's like, I remember when that comic book dropped, and no one cared. No one cared. You could go out and buy copies for $20, $30. No one cared. But the movie came out, the video game came out, Miles Morales became an iconic character. James Gunn came out recently and said that is by far his favorite comic book film of all time. He said that is a flawless movie. And I'm excited to see where that IP goes for Miles Morales, and especially the next film that's coming out in a couple weeks. And we're going to see him. It's inevitable. He's going to be in the MCU. Like, it's going to happen. There's just no way. It could be 5 years, 10 years from now, but it's going to happen eventually. And this character is going to only grow in popularity. So what's that going to do to his first appearance comic book and his first appearance digital collectibles? I think it's going to be very significant.
this has history repeating itself written all over it. All
Absolutely.
over it. There's story upon story upon story of something being thrown in the trash, garbage, under retail, give it away.
Yep.
Pay me to take it. And we're seeing the exact same thing, but it's history all over again. Like if you zoom out and all these stories that you guys are sharing of FAs and things that were, considered not even worth time back then and what they're valued at now. And now you're looking at the digital collecting realm, and that you've entered into a completely new environment. And there's so much possibility in the future of what we can do with these things, gamification, whatever it may be. And all it's like a comic book on steroids. Like there's so much more potential to be able to do so much in the future with these things that it screams at me.
And technology is evolving, right? So
exactly.
Now you've got Apple releasing their mixed reality headset. So can veve rush to the app and make it compatible with the Apple AR? I mean, it's definitely like these two are definitely dependent on each other. I think that we're dependent on Apple or a big company making the huge investment in progressing forward. Before Apple even did it, Qualcomm had to make the chipset, right? So like there's a whole supply chain of vendors that have to make stuff happen to kind of get to the point where you're putting something on, experiencing a whole new world, and pun intended, and the other and then can veve take advantage of that, and can veve take advantage of that with the veveverse, and will that cause a whole new wave of collectors to come in going, I have to have this because I don't live near Disneyland like veve Magic. I can't go there every day. I can only go there once a month. So the other 29 days, I'm putting on my headset and I'm going to play with my collectibles, and I'm going to be there and I'm going to start playing, music in the background. And that's how I meditate every day and whatever. And that's my personal experience. Right. So I think that's worth a lot. People pay a lot for experiences. And, we've seen that with parks, right? That ticket prices go up, people still buy passes. It doesn't matter. It's like tobacco, cigarettes. It's $15 a pack. It's $100 a pack. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about like the golden moments, for example. I mean, there's so many. The whole collection is so special in so many ways. There's so many firsts of each brand. But I'm still optimistic about potential utility coming to those. We'll see. I'm not counting on it. Regardless, I think those are very significant historically, and they're going to hold tremendous value for that reason, long term. Yeah. And people are going to understand that over time.
Full set. I'm buying you lunch, so there's some utility for you.
yeah. I love lunch.
So, like, what do you think it's going to take? I mean, Silicon was just talking about, these experiences and being able to be at the park on your headset. What other sorts of things do you think it's going to take to get the physical collectors to, especially ones that have maybe been around in collecting in the same vein as you, Sean, and have seen the past history of how things have nobody wanted Ultimate Fallout, nobody wanted AF-15. What is it going to take for them to see sort of like the same trend and pattern in digital collecting? Or what do you think it's going to take to get a lot of these physical collectors interested in the digital realm?
I think one of the biggest things, especially from physical collectors, they want to have something in their hands. So it's important that it hits one of the senses, right? So I think seeing will be believing for them when they can actually showcase these in their homes. Or they can actually, that's going to be a really big deal. It's going to be a really big deal. So I think the technology is going to be a huge impact on, because you're going to see when this announcement happens with the AR glasses, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a gain of interest from a lot of different people, new people, not just on the veve app, but just AR in general. Any Web3 company involved in AR collectibles, they're going to probably see an uptick from that announcement. I wouldn't be surprised at least.
I don't know if you saw the interview that Dan and David did with a New Zealand company, the two of them, but Dan was talking about the AR glasses and that being able to put them on and walk around your house. And, you know, you have all these collectors that have their physical shelves of items, and you'll be able to have your digital display of items right next to it. And you can decorate your whole home, your physical home, with your digital collectibles. And then they'll all be right there in your glasses. And I was like, oh man, that's going to be amazing.
That's huge. And that's why a big reason why I love the posters so much, and I think are really undervalued, when you can actually put those up in your home and have them be permanent. You know, I wouldn't be surprised in the future where people are going to have, you know, opportunities to rent certain special posters for events in their home, so people can share those specific special mint numbered posters, you know, with anyone around the world. And that's the coolest thing about these digital collectibles is accessibility, because there's such a big barrier to entry for physical collectibles when, you know, you're trying to sell or send them to different parts of the world. I mean, I posted about this a few months ago, but there was a Pokemon video game. It was worth about $5,000, and it went through customs, U.S. customs, and they destroyed the package. They destroyed it. The graded, video game. They destroyed it, and that's it. I mean, that kind of news, it really discourages people from wanting to get involved in the space worldwide. But digital collectibles, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about, there's so many things that you don't have to worry about, which a lot of people aren't really understanding right now, especially if you're not heavily involved in the physical collecting space. But these are all barriers to entry, and with digital collectibles kind of solves that. But again, you know, a lot of people who I've met who've got involved in the digital collectibles first were never collectors, are now buying physicals like crazy. I mean, like New York Comic Con last year, I met a gentleman. He's like, Sean, I'm 55 years old. I've never been to a comic show in my life. I've never stepped into a comic book store. But now I own over $100,000 worth of physical grails because of veve, because of digital collectibles. And I'm like, yeah. Because I understand now. I get it. I understand. And I've put tremendous time and research into this stuff, and I understand the significance of these collectibles on the physical side and also the digital as well. I mean, he's very bullish on the digital, but physicals especially. And that's why I'm like starting to like look into different markets, understand like the concept of blue ocean, red ocean, like what collectibles are in the blue ocean right now? What are people not fighting over? And I'm seeing that with sealed media, especially because as we become more and more digital, we're not going to see sealed video games in the future, like probably the next 10, 15 years.
We're all going to start competing with you, Sean. We're all going to start bidding with you. I know Sean wants this, so maybe I could charge him $20 more. Just kidding.
Especially now being able to grade them and differentiating value, having pop reports, understanding like what is out there and how many are out there. Because in a way, like CGC, their pop report, it's very similar to the blockchain. You have a number that's connected to that item, and you can look it up and verify it online. And that's a really big deal. Like here's an example. Here's a graded a promo cassette tape of Hercules, and it's graded. Wow. Yeah, and it's such an awesome museum piece. I love it so much. But I'm really excited about these, especially like the promo variants, promo variants, because they were never available to the public. In a lot of cases, especially the for your consideration tapes, like these ones. This is Pocahontas. So you see right on there, it says, oh, there you go, for your consideration up top. And it's still sealed. But these were sent to like Academy members for voting. And here's one for Hercules, Go the Distance, right there. And this is on the back. It says, for your consideration. These are going to be a really big deal. A really big deal, I think. I think they're going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and a lot of good points in there, Sean. I want to add one more spin to this, and you know, I think a lot of us are like, hey, when will the world come? When will it show up? But I think we need to look at it from a different angle, and the different angle is this is a whole new experience, right? This is a whole new experience that maybe the physical people aren't fully on board with and may never be on board with. We will get some crossover, no doubt, just like we have crossover from digital. Now, it is clear we have a lot of crossover from digital to physical. So it definitely benefits the industry very well, especially the physical community. But what I think is you are breeding new collectors on veve that weren't collectors before. And this is a new breed of collector. So maybe I'm collecting for I'm collecting for the community. I enjoy collecting. and I enjoy having a community of people that are like-minded that I can go do stuff with. Just like with any collector community.
Mhm.
I collect for the experience. I can go to the Viviverse, I can socialize, I can create my own world, and I can go live in it, right? These are new types of minted collectors. Maybe the handicapped. I collect because
Mm,
I need to go in the Viviverse to socialize,
mm.
and maybe in person it's challenging to do that because I'm in a wheelchair. I can't just go anywhere very easily. I can't get on a plane. I'm quadriplegic. Guess what? Now I have a way to socialize. I have cancer. Guess what? I can't get in front of large crowds, right? So there's lots of reasons for people to come for the experience. And I think that that's going to be something that's going to catch us off guard a little bit. We'll see who kind of adopts really long term, starts adopting this, but you will see. I think you will see, fall over. But we're minting new collectors, and this is the interesting part. This
Love
is a
that.
new this is a new this is a new thing. We
Yeah.
can't put limits around it, and the limits of how many comic book collectors are there that collect Iron Man? Okay. Maybe there's 100,000, maybe there's a 250,000, whatever it is. How many Iron Man fans are there? And how many want the
A lot.
experience? And it's a lot
A lot.
more than a million, right? And so that's worldwide. It could be hundreds of millions. And so that's what I'm talking about is you never know. People want that experience. They're all in Iron Man. They want everything Iron Man. They want the experience, and they come to Vivi and they're like, whoa, I can't get this anywhere else.
So well said. I don't know why I had the craziest movie quote come into my brain right now. It's from Katie Heron from Mean Girls. The limit does not exist.
I think us, even seasoned collectors like Sean and I, we can't really fathom where the boundaries are right now, and nor should we put them there.
It's like
Yeah.
we have ESPN or something. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, I think this is a perfect place to cap it off at. Do you guys have any final things you want to say?
I'm just so excited about this market. I just physical and digital collectibles. I'm as excited now as I was 2 years ago when I got involved in the digital collectible space. I'm probably more so now, just because I have a deep understanding of the long-term vision of all this stuff. I mean, I understand where it's all going. It's so clear to me, and it's just you got to be patient. It's tough, especially for new collectors on veve when they're used to seeing every single drop sell for 2x, and it can feel discouraging. But if you really put the time in to see where this is all going, you should be very excited, very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm bullish. I guess I've always been bullish. The prices were the prices, and they were reflected in the market. It doesn't reflect current value of what you have. So you talk about that blue water, red water. I believe all of EV is blue water, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And in
Yeah.
fact, it might even be like light blue water, if there's such a thing, where it can get darker blue, right? Like there's more richness to come, and then we'll see spots of red water here and there. But like, I think that we're just so early that the market hasn't had a chance to really come to full adoption of AR, of the technology, of the Viviverse. I mean, we haven't even seen the Viviverse yet. Like, we've seen it, but we haven't experienced it.
Right.
And just the economy of hiring people to design our Viviverse houses, which they said, the team said is something that they're going to make sure is a priority, that you can hire someone in to come and play with your collection and build it a certain way. And that creates all new sort of opportunities for people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that veve is a game in lots of different ways. There's a game to make money, there's a game to have fun, there's a game to socialize. It's a game that people can easily onboard onto without having to worry about crypto or know what an NFT is.
Yes.
They can do it through an app, and they can do it through Apple Store or Play Store account or, a credit card, and so it's something they can do really easily. Um, and they can do it cheaply right now for, certain series of collectibles. When I say cheaply, I mean, they don't have to, you don't have to come and spend a lot of money on veve to have fun, right? Like that's not the point. Now, us collectors that like to collect stuff and like to mint hunt and like to play these extreme games, we're going to play these games. I mean, this is what we do, and we're gonna, we're gonna brag, and we're gonna, carry our trophies around and stuff, because we can. But I think that that's the fun part about veve is there's a place for everyone, and it's all inclusive, and it's amazing.
Well said. All right. I think with that, we'll wrap it up. This was a really fun conversation. It got way deeper than I even thought we were going to go. But really, really good chats. And it even gave me new perspective on the physical versus digital and all the historical points that both of you made. We're seeing it happening again, and I'm excited to be on the right side of history, in my opinion. So thank you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, having me.
All right. Catch you later.
All right. Peace out.